Airports are built on precision. Every bag is tagged, scanned, and routed through a labyrinth of conveyor belts, scanners, and handlers before it finds its rightful place in the belly of a plane. Heathrow Airport, one of the busiest in the world, thrives on this efficiency. Millions of passengers pass through every year, and yet, for most travelers, their luggage always appears at the carousel, right on time as if by magic. But in 2016, inside the endless stream of suitcases moving under Heathrow's bright lights, a single bag didn't follow the rules. It wasn't lost. It wasn't stolen. It was placed, deliberately, carefully, and with intent. Security staff noticed something odd. The bag wasn't aligned with the digital record. Its movements didn't match the data on the system. A suitcase had slipped through the cracks of Heathrow's flawless machine. And in a world where airports stand as the front line against trafficking and smuggling, even one misplaced piece of luggage can't be ignored. That single suitcase was the beginning of a revelation. An industrial-scale drug trafficking network operating from inside one of the most secure airports in Europe. The system itself wasn't hacked. Instead, the weakness was human. A handful of trusted baggage handlers, people like Joyce Jury and Muhammad Ali, men and women wearing uniforms that granted them unquestioned access, were quietly turning Heathrow into a gateway for cocaine shipments worth millions. It was almost elegant. The drugs arrived hidden in luggage from international flights. The handlers diverted them before security could intervene. Then, with insider access, they reintroduced the clean bags back into circulation, making it seem as though nothing unusual had happened. No alarms. No alerts. Just another suitcase sliding smoothly onto the conveyor. This was the brilliance and the danger of their scheme. Airports rely on trust. Trust that employees are honest. Trust that procedures are followed. Trust that those in uniforms serve the system, not exploit it. But in Heathrow's case, trust became the weakest link. And all it took was one out-of-place suitcase to expose the truth. At first glance, the operation looked invisible. Nothing more than routine baggage handling at one of the busiest airports on Earth. But behind the hum of conveyor belts and the shuffle of rolling suitcases, Heathrow's machinery had been quietly repurposed. The scheme worked like this. Trusted handlers like Joyce Jury and Muhammad Ali moved with the calm precision of employees who belonged. When flights from South America touched down, they knew exactly which bags to target. These weren't random selections. The suitcases were already marked, pre-identified in encrypted messages sent days in advance. Inside them was more than clothes and souvenirs. Hidden within linings, false bottoms, and sealed packages sat bricks of cocaine. Not a few grams but kilograms at a time. Once secured, Jury and Ali used their access to pull the bags aside, slipping them into staff-only zones where security eyes rarely lingered. From there, the operation depended on timing. Couriers arrived on domestic flights, blending in as ordinary passengers. They collected the compromised luggage, rolled it out of the airport, and disappeared into the city with millions in drugs packed neatly inside. But Jury and Ali weren't working alone. Behind them were coordinators like Priya Mungra and Wilfred Asu, who acted as the crucial link between the handlers on the ground and the organizers higher up the chain. Their role was communication, making sure everyone knew which flight, which suitcase, and which courier was in play. And the communication method was as carefully chosen as the suitcases themselves. They relied on BlackBerry Messenger, a platform favored by criminal networks for its encrypted security. Through coded chats, they shared details of pre-identified bags, flagged by unique tags and numbers. Precision was everything. A single mistake could mean interception, arrest, or worse, suspicion from their own side. For a time it worked flawlessly. Over 100 kilograms of cocaine, along with cannabis shipments, slipped through Heathrow's security net. The profits were staggering, fueling both luxury and arrogance. But there was one flaw they didn't account for. The National Crime Agency was watching. Slowly, patiently, investigators pieced together fragments of CCTV, movement logs, and digital intercepts. What looked like routine baggage handling began to form a pattern. Bags that shouldn't have moved, did. Employees whose shifts seemed ordinary, weren't. The machinery of Heathrow was still running. But beneath its polished surface, the NCA had started to see the gears turning in the wrong direction. And soon, the illusion of invisibility would collapse. Airports depend on one fragile commodity: trust. Every passenger who passes through the scanners, every suitcase that moves through the carousel, every vehicle that drives behind the cordon relies on the idea that those in uniform are guardians of safety. It is a belief built on ritual: the search of a bag, the flash of a badge, the sight of a fluorescent vest guiding planes across the tarmac. But between 2019 and 2023, Heathrow's trust was quietly weaponized against itself. And at the center of it was a man who should have been the last line of defense. June Dar, an airport security manager. Dar wasn't a baggage handler, wasn't a low-level operative cutting corners for quick cash. He wore the uniform of authority, the kind that opened gates others couldn't pass through. His position gave him something far more valuable than muscle or speed: legitimacy. With a swipe of his pass, he could move secure vehicles into the most restricted zones of the airport. Nobody questioned him, because to question him was to question the system itself. And that was exactly how the system cracked. Dar's method was precise, almost surgical. When shipments were due, he coordinated with couriers like Michael Williams and Jessica Waldron, who arrived under the cover of ordinary passengers. But they never walked through customs carrying suspicious luggage. Instead, Dar ensured the cocaine bypassed those layers entirely. Using secure vehicles, he guided the couriers into hidden corners of Heathrow, secluded service bays, maintenance areas, spaces where CCTV coverage was thin and oversight thinner. There, under the shadow of the airport's vast machinery, handovers took place. Suitcases weren't checked by scanners or weighed by handlers. They were lifted by Dar's own hands, placed in the wrong car at the right time, and rolled out of Heathrow as if they had never entered. The scale was enormous. Authorities later revealed that hundreds of kilograms of cocaine flowed through this single breach, a stream worth tens of millions of pounds on London streets. What made it even more dangerous was the international precision driving it. While Dar moved cargo on the ground, the supply line stretched back to Colombia, source of some of the world's purest cocaine. But Colombian authorities, working quietly with the National Crime Agency, set a trap. When shipments were flagged, they swapped the cocaine bricks for wooden blocks, indistinguishable at first glance but worthless in street value. From Bogotá to Heathrow, the packages moved exactly as intended. Couriers handled them, Dar collected them, vehicles rolled out under his authority. Only this time, investigators followed every step. What should have been millions of pounds in drugs was nothing more than timber, proof of concept that the pipeline worked, and that Dar was at its heart. Behind the couriers and the corrupted security manager stood the organizers, the men who rarely touched the product but controlled everything through encrypted apps. Rufford Davis and David Farquharson weren't seen dragging bags or loading vehicles. They issued orders, managed timing, and laundered profits, all hidden behind usernames and burner devices. Like the 2016 network before them, they placed their faith in encryption. Messages bounced across servers, coded in slang and pseudonyms, instructing Dar when to move, Williams when to travel, Waldron when to collect. But just as EncroChat had been cracked years earlier, investigators had grown skilled at piercing the digital armor traffickers believed was impenetrable. The result was a slow unraveling. Surveillance logged every meeting in the hidden corners of Heathrow. Vehicle movements were cross-checked against shift patterns. And the Colombian wooden blocks, seized in London after their theatrical journey across the Atlantic, gave prosecutors something no encrypted chat could deny: physical proof. The irony was almost poetic. The man entrusted with shielding Britain's busiest airport from threats had become its greatest vulnerability. Dar's badge wasn't just a tool of protection, it was a weapon. His authority allowed him to do what traffickers on the outside could only dream of: turn Heathrow's security system into a smuggling service. By the time arrests came, the network's confidence had already cracked. Williams and Waldron, the couriers, were caught red-handed. Davis and Farquharson's encrypted devices, once the backbone of control, became blueprints of conspiracy in the hands of investigators. And Dar, the uniformed guardian turned infiltrator, stood exposed, not as a protector of the system, but as its betrayal made flesh. For 4 years, Heathrow's greatest threat wasn't a passenger hiding contraband in a shoe or a suitcase loaded with cash. It was a trusted insider, moving freely in plain sight, shielded by the very trust he corrupted. And once again the message was clear: when trust becomes the weakest link, even the strongest fortress can fall. Justice, when it finally arrives, often feels less like a single gavel strike and more like a reckoning echoing through time. For Heathrow, that reckoning came in 2 distinct eras, separated by years, yet bound by the same fatal flaw: insider betrayal. The first wave broke in 2016, when the baggage handler network was exposed. Joyce Jury, Muhammad Ali, Wilfred Asu, and their collaborators had believed their movements were invisible, their coded communications unbreakable. But when the trials concluded, the illusion of invisibility shattered. Collectively, the defendants received 139 years in prison, a sentence designed not only to punish but to warn. Prosecutors spoke of an industrial-scale conspiracy, one that turned Heathrow into a smuggler's highway and mocked the very systems built to stop it. Yet even as Jury and Ali vanished behind prison walls, history was already preparing to repeat itself. By 2023, a new chapter unfolded, darker in some ways because of who stood accused. June Dar, the airport security manager entrusted to guard the gates, now stood in the dock. Prosecutors wasted no words. This was not just a crime, they said, but a gross betrayal of trust. Dar had leveraged his authority, his access, his uniform, to turn Britain's busiest airport into a courier service for Colombian cartels. The sentences reflected the scale of that betrayal. Dar received 16.5 years. The organizers, Rufford Davis and David Farquharson, were each handed 14.5 years. The couriers, Michael Williams and Jessica Waldron, received terms of over 6 years apiece. What had once seemed like a flawless machine of corruption collapsed in the cold light of a courtroom, its leaders branded not as masterminds, but as criminals stripped of illusion. In both cases, judges struck the same chord. Whether baggage handler or security manager, whether shifting bags on a carousel or driving secure vehicles through restricted gates, the theme was identical. The gravest threat to an airport's security comes not from outsiders, but from those within. The reflection is sobering. Heathrow, a symbol of Britain's global reach, its busiest and most vital hub, had twice been compromised from the inside. Twice, trusted insiders had repurposed the airport's machinery for personal gain. And twice, the system had only uncovered the betrayal after hundreds of kilograms of Class A drugs had already slipped through. 3 cases. 2 eras. 1 unshakable lesson. Insider corruption is the deadliest threat of all. Because when the guardians of the gate decide to open it, no scanner, no protocol, and no wall can hold the line. And that is the haunting truth that lingers long after the trials conclude. This was the story of Heathrow's hidden betrayals, of baggage handlers turned smugglers, a security manager turned insider threat, and networks that mistook trust for weakness. If you found this breakdown compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every week, we uncover the stories that lie beneath the surface of the headlines, stories of power, greed, betrayal, and the human cost that follows. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next deep dive. Because behind every airport gate, every encrypted message, and every suitcase rolling across the floor, another story is waiting.